This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Hey team, we have a new sponsor here at the Crypto Conversation, BitGet, one of the world's leading copy trading cryptocurrency exchanges. Yes, indeed. What happens if you've got the funds to invest, but you don't have the time to keep track of the market? You still want to make smart money moves. What do you do? Well, copy trading is a popular choice for beginner traders. You can shorten your learning curve by uncovering tips and strategies from more experienced traders. BitGet's copy trading platform has over 80,000 elite traders to choose from and 380,000 followers just like yourself who are already using the BitGet copy trading platform as a potential passive income stream. All it takes is one click. You can subscribe to an elite, profitable strategist, set your limits, automate your orders, and monitor their trades. I've got some links in the show notes below. One link will take you through to the BitGet sign-up page, give you a VIP discount. So learn all about it for yourself thanks to BitGet. And now it is on with the show. My guest today is Max McKendry. Max is the Director of Business Development for Phi Labs, building out the Archway blockchain, which of course is an incentivized layer 1 blockchain that allows developers to capture the value that their dapps create to enable sustainable economic models. Welcome to the show, Max.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Andy. It's a pleasure being here with you and excited to talk about what's going on with Archway.
Awesome. Hey, pleasure to have you here as well, Max. Just to kick off, love to understand a bit about your role as Director of Business Development for Phi Labs, and also, give us a little bit of your personal backstory. What have you been doing in the lead up to joining the team at Phi Labs to build out Archway?
Yeah, no, happy to give a little context. So as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Business Development for Phi Labs. Phi Labs is a core contributor to Archway Network, which is the protocol. So what we've done so far really is focused on creating that infrastructure, the core infrastructure that's needed to build out the entire ecosystem and network of applications. So my role here as Director of Business Development is to help steward that by identifying different developers, teams, projects, you name it, and really onboarding them to Archway, whether that's educating them on the core purpose of the protocol and what differentiates us from others in the space, as well as just identifying really talented teams or use cases and getting them to bring it to Archway so that the ecosystem and the users of the ecosystem can get access to those types of to applications on chain. So that's a big piece of it. And then also just working with already established protocols and brands to make partnerships that are very much symbiotic, so that both us and the partners are benefiting from the relationship, rather than just the type of partnerships we tend to see, which are more on paper. Really trying to focus on developing strong partnerships that help further both of our narratives and really use cases.
Got it. Thank you, Max. And of course, the real context here is that we're slowly getting closer and closer to the launch of Archway Mainnet. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I know there's a couple of pieces in the news around the Archway ecosystem at the moment. I saw that, I think it's the Archway Foundation concluded a public sale. So maybe just give us the quick update on that. And I understand also there's an Archway airdrop of that Arch token that is underway to various communities. So maybe just, as we go deeper into the show, just cover off that public sale and some quick details of that airdrop.
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, the Archway Foundation held a public sale through CoinList, where we're basically distributing 5% of the total supply And the purpose of that sale is to do exactly that, is to distribute supply and decentralize the protocol. And that went very well. That took place on June 15th, and I believe we sold out of the entire supply. But when I say we, I mean the foundation, but I'm speaking on behalf of the broader Archway network, and all the contributors involved. And so it sold out, I believe, in under an hour. So that was a great success, and it showed that there was interest in the protocol. So that is a huge milestone, which leads us into Mainnet, which will be at the beginning of July. And as part of that, additional ways to help distribute that initial token supply is through an airdrop, as you mentioned. So we recently had a campaign where we've announced 3 different communities that will be receiving the airdrop. And these communities were basically identified as having some sort of connection to Archway in one way or another. For example, stakers of the Atom token will receive Archway or the Arch token as part of the airdrop. And that's because we believe things like, hey, if Cosmos and the Atom token has the largest user base in the entire ecosystem, we want to alert those users of what we're building on Archway so that they can, one, take part in the ecosystem, but then have a reason to come check it out. And that's really a core purpose of airdrops, is to not only distribute the entire protocol out, but to really give people the opportunity to come try the network and see if it's something they'd be interested in participating in more.
Got it. Very interesting. Thank you, Max. Now, I actually had Dan Elderbeck from your team. He was on the show earlier this year, so we learnt all about Archway then. That was a great show, actually. But he was talking about how there's kind of a belief on your team or a view from Archway that eventually the blockchain space will start to see a level of technical commoditization, and when that comes, things will start to look very different. So based on that kind of view, what do you think will be the new criteria then for success? What will determine the new winners in the space as we evolve and continue to move forward?
That's a great question, and it's honestly a really tough one to answer. Obviously, none of us can see the future, but what I would say is that it seems like in past cycles, a lot of the focus has been on just kind of increasing speed and throughput, and really just trying to make the technology as fast as possible. But what I think is changing now is that we are kind of at that time in previous cycles proving out just the technology in general, that it could work. But what we weren't spending a lot of time of, in my opinion, was really determining whether or not it's a sustainable model. And that's where I think things will change going forward, is there'll be less focus on certain vanity metrics, I'll call them, like throughput and transactions per second, because those things are not current issues as far as I can tell in the space. We're not being held back by how fast we can settle or how fast transactions can finalize on chain. We're being held back by the adoption, right? And proper use cases. And I think that's where the focus will start to be. It's going to be on technology that is more advanced and allows more flexibility in what you're building. And also it's going to be on chains or designs that are designed for sustainability from an economic standpoint. A lot of the original thesis of blockchains is built on this premise of open source software, and you'll build it and distribute it for free, and it'll operate like a public good. But unfortunately, public goods have to be subsidized. And therefore, that is a big issue in this space, because not everyone has access to those subsidies. And I guess that's where I think we're trending towards, is this whole new view of blockchains in general, where it's not reliant on subsidies, but rather can get to the point where it's self-sustaining. So I think building underlying business models into these protocols and into the tech is what will truly be the next focus of the next group of investors, the next group of adopters.
Yeah, and a really good way to understand that, and this is something we talked about on that other podcast with Dan, is, just value capture engine is a great way of understanding how Archway hopes to create these new incentive driven economic models. So I know that, Archway enables developers to do everything from program a premium into their smart contracts. There's the developers are able to get a portion of the network's token inflation, and even a portion of the gas fees as well. So those are just some ways that devs can potentially get some economic value from the dapps that they create on Archway. So I wonder then, Max, in terms of your role as a business development guy, how are those conversations going with the various dapp developers and teams out there that are looking at what potential ecosystem they might start to deploy their dapps on? Do they understand the long-term vision of what you guys are trying to do? Is it kind of are those kind of incentive models attractive to them? Just give us a sense of how those conversations are going.
I mean, overall, the conversations are going very well with the developers and the teams building, because once you're able to articulate and really explain to them the purpose of the model and how it works, I think they see the vision. And then once you can actually start to apply numbers to that, they can really start to ideate, how much more value they could capture potentially. But what I would say the biggest hurdle right now is reconditioning the entire space to think differently. We've really built this whole space on the idea of receiving grants and receiving funding. And therefore, there's no real incentive to build a model beyond that funding. And so what we're trying to do is, when we're talking to these teams, is really deliver that message of, not only do we want to, get your application off the ground, but we want it to become sustainable so that you can start to be the one who controls your funding and is able to build up runway for your business, if you will. And that's a hard concept to explain to some teams, because we're flipping what I would call the traditional thesis on its head. So a lot of chains like Ethereum, or even like the Atom token, they take the stance that the value is being accrued at that layer one. So like for Ethereum, at Ethereum's layer, right? But that's, in my eyes, not necessarily how it should work, because now you have app developers like Uniswap. Uniswap could do a ton of volume, millions of dollars of ETH will be burned, but the protocol itself is not earning any of those fees. It's being split amongst the LPs. So the only way for them to create value is to create a token. And all that token is meant to do is to create value for the creators of the actual application, and then the users have it to vote in governance. So that's their value prop. But what I really want to show people is that should not be the case. The application drives the value, right? The people building the products drive the value. And therefore, once we explain that to them and we say, hey, instead of you paying us to use our chain, we'd rather subsidize you to build on our chain, because you're going to bring the value. You're going to bring the TVL. You're going to bring the users. So it's just really taking the model that most people are used to and flipping it on its head, and then explaining that to developers. And once it clicks. But it is a hard message to get across, because it is counter to what we've seen in the space over the last 3 to 5 years, and how really the space has operated since I've been involved.
Got it. All right. Well, I wish you the best of luck with those continuing conversations. Max, look, you mentioned, I think that we are very close to Mainnet. I'm not sure if you want to give a definite date or not, but you did mention July. We're about a week away from July at the moment. So obviously, I'm sure, you and the team will be very, very busy as we approach that Mainnet deployment. We've talked then about, what is on offer in the Archway ecosystem for devs, developers, and the teams that are going to create the dapps. What about from a user perspective? Just what can your average dapp user expect once some of these dapps go live on Mainnet in July?
So in terms of a specific date, I don't think I want to commit to that quite yet, but I will say it will be in the first half of July, and we do anticipate it'll be in the early first half of July. So that's probably a good reference point. And I would say keep an eye out for any updates on that. We should be communicating out more granular dates in the next few weeks or so. But in terms of the dapps or the applications, an average user could, when the chain launches, they'll basically be able to test out a few different products, some from the DeFi space, some from the NFT kind of vertical, and then there's just a lot of different developer tooling and different use cases for developers themselves who want to build on top of a protocol. So it's going to be a mix of user-facing applications as well as developer-facing tooling, because really we're trying to get both of those markets interested in the protocol, because the developers are what's going to build the ecosystem, what's going to drive the value to the actual protocol, but the users are needed in that too, or else, if you have no users, it's impossible to get traction. And without good applications, it's pretty much impossible to get users. So they both have a big role. So we're trying to prioritize both in how we're building out the ecosystem.
That makes perfect sense, Max. Of course, and this is where, blockchain, Web3, it's where we need to head. It needs to be easy and seamless to use, both on the developer side and, of course, on the user side. So I know you guys have talked about this idea of kind of like an AWS-like interoperability with the tools that you're creating, so that it makes it much easier for not just, crypto natives, but for Web2 developers, founders, business operators who aren't necessarily crypto native, but you want to make something that is easy for them to just come along and easily launch some kind of new business model on chain. And needs to be intuitive and easy for those people, but of course also for the users who just want to come along and use those dapps as quickly and easily as they can. That's kind of the vision of where we're heading, right?
Exactly. And as I mentioned earlier, a core focus is trying to get developers to build on the protocol, because we believe they are the ones that are creating the value on chain.
Yes.
So to do so, you need to provide them with the tools to make it as easy as possible for them to build those applications. Part of attracting people to your protocol is having quality tech and having tech that they can use, but you also need to have all the tools that are necessary to use that tech efficiently. And that's something that we're missing quite a bit in this space is this suite of products. So like you mentioned, AWS, one thing they've done really, really well is vertically integrate. They've added so many features and different components you can add on to what you're doing that it becomes almost more of difficulty to leave this kind of walled garden than it is just to stay, right? So we want to kind of replicate that, where we just provide so many tools, so much quality tooling, and then quality support and a great foundation to build on, that there is no reason to want to leave. And even if you did have that thought, like, hey, maybe I do want to try out another framework, we want you to have to seriously think about, will I be able to get this same type of seamless experience on that other chain? And is it worth the amount of effort it'll take to basically rebuild all of this somewhere else, instead of just using the tools that are already provided here? So it seems like an odd approach, but it's very much one that we think is going to be successful, because people want, just like when you're using like a Mac product, right? You can start to get all these products interconnected and communicating, and it just makes the experience much smoother, much easier. And that's something that we're trying to do with Archway through the tooling and framework, is just provide everything you could possibly need so that you can build an application, deploy it, and basically start building up value immediately.
All right. Well, if that's the case, then Max, I'd love to just zoom out a little bit, get some wider context. So, assuming all goes well, and I'm sure it'll go amazingly well. Mainnet launch sometime in July. And then as you start to attract more and more developers to the ecosystem, they start to get value from whatever they build. User growth starts to just grow. We probably get a crypto bull market in the meantime, so we get a whole lot of new impetus into the ecosystem, a lot more attention. Again, zoom out, say 5 years time or longer. What does Archway start to look like then, as everything starts to really kick into higher gear?
Yeah, I mean, if all goes as planned, I mean, I would expect Archway to be, one of the most successful protocols in the space. I feel like we're one of the first groups of contributors to create what I would say is a multifaceted platform that is built for sustainability. And when I say that, it's because there's more than one thing I think that we're doing to drive sustainability of the protocol. It starts at the core level of just not having high inflation. I think a lot of layer ones run into this problem where they have some sort of arbitrary inflation metric, either that it's very front loaded for the initial users, or is based on an arbitrary timeline. And what we found is that's just not the best way to distribute emissions, and that emissions should be much more pointed, right? They should not be high inflation. They should be closer to just enough inflation to cover overhead of public goods, similar to how monetary policy works. So from that standpoint, Archway is planning to have a low fixed inflation rate around 10%, and then it'll have counter inflationary measures through activity on chain. So you could compare it to something like EIP 1559, which if listeners aren't too familiar with the technical side, that is the gas burning mechanism that Ethereum uses, where as block space gets more full, more Ethereum is actually burned than emitted. So you can actually create a deflationary schedule over time if enough block space is being used. So we actually took that kind of as a nice starting point for Archway, because we also think that getting to a net inflation rate, a low net inflation rate, is the way to essentially cover the overhead of a blockchain. But that's only one piece. And then it's the value capture engine, which allows the actual applications to directly capture value, right? So those are two things that haven't really been implemented in the space yet. So therefore, if we can complete this grand vision, we think we have a flywheel here that could continue to proliferate over the next 5 years. I mean, we're talking about, as application developers come in and create good applications, that should bring in more users. As more users use these applications, that creates more on-chain activity, which fills more blocks. And ultimately, a layer one is commoditizing block space. That is what a layer one is doing. They're essentially selling block space. So, this is part of that flywheel, is like, how do you attract on-chain activity to fill these blocks? And we believe it's through empowering developers, the best developers, to come and build the best apps, which will attract the most users and the most on-chain activity. And that should just be a continuous circle that direct or indirectly provides value to the layer one token, because you need that layer one token to access these applications.
Fantastic. Very, very well said, Max. Look, it's an exciting vision. So I suppose as we finish off this part of the podcast, just, for people listening and they're hearing how the flywheel works, they're perhaps intrigued by the Archway value capture engine, and they want to learn how they can participate, capture some of that value for their own work. Tell people where they can go just to kind of get themselves up to date with what you guys are building on the Archway chain. If they're not familiar and they think, well, Mainnet is approaching, I need to start to have a bit of a look at this. So just tell people where they can go. And then after that, we'll go to a very quick break. And then, of course, we'll come back and finish off. We'll have some fun. We'll run you through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. But before we do that, tell people where to go. Thank you, Max.
Yeah, no, happy to. So if you're trying to learn more about Archway in general and then the network, I'd recommend starting at archway.io, which is our main website. From there, there's a ton of different resources, and you can get pretty much as deep down the rabbit hole as you'd like. But that landing page will at least give you a high level understanding of what we're working on. If you do want to get more on the technical side, our docs, so docs.archway.io, will provide you with not only the technical documentation, but the economics behind the protocol as well as some information on like the allocation of tokens and things like that. So there's tons of resources on our website, as well as a Discord and Twitter that you can join, which again are all listed on that website. It really just depends on how much information you want and how involved you want to get with the protocol, but we have plenty of places to find that information. And of course, you can always reach out to me directly on Twitter or any other medium, and I can assist you directly as well.
Awesome. And of course, links will be in the show notes to the Archway website and so on. All right, let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll be back to run Max through the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take round. Back in one moment.
Look, we'd all like to say we're pro traders, but the reality is we're probably not. But with BitGet, you don't have to be. Why? Because BitGet is the world's largest copy trading exchange. Instead of you muddling through it on your own, feel confident. BitGet allows you to automatically copy trade from over 80,000 elite traders with 24/7 support on our secure copy trading platform. Start following expert traders on bitget.com. Check for details in the show notes and join BitGet today.
All right, we are back, and I'm with Max McKendry. Max, of course, is Director of Business Development at Phi Labs, building out the Archway blockchain and ecosystem. Max, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it, Max. Just going to run some questions at you. No right or wrong way to do it. Just give us some punchy, rapid fire, hot take style answers. Question one for you, Max. Where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
More towards multi-chain, but I believe both have their role.
That is the correct answer. It doesn't have to be black and white or one or the other. It can be both. Thank you. All right, I agree. Max, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
That the FAT protocol thesis is incorrect.
Oh, nice. And just, all right, I know it's a little bit hard to explain in the kind of a hot take context, but just for anyone who's not familiar with the FAT protocol thesis, just give us the really two-sentence summary of what that is, and then, why you think that is incorrect.
In the simplest form, it's just the theory that the value of a chain or a blockchain or a product accrues at the base layer, not at the application layer, essentially. And the reason I think that's wrong is, to make it very simple, is look at the internet. The protocol is the HTTP, but that's not where the value is being accrued. It's being accrued at the application layer with things like Facebook and things like that. So to me, I think that the Web3 world should operate in the same manner. The protocol itself indirectly benefits from the value that the application layer creates.
Very, very well said. And that is exactly what new chains and ecosystems like Archway are trying to do. Very well said, Max. Look, hey, Bill Gates famously said we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So, we did talk about this a little bit in the first part of the podcast, but zoom out 10 years, Web3, the metaverse, Archway, Bitcoin. What does the world look like in 10 years' time, Max?
Well, hopefully what we'll see is that there are a ton of different options for where you want to build your applications. And then the layer ones are the ones that survive basically because they were built in a sustainable way and provide actual value. So I'd say 10 years from now, I hope we've consolidated the space to have the real winners emerge and just allow people to build as simply as possible and earn from what they've contributed.
Makes sense to me. All right. Flip side of this, of course, is a quote by sci-fi author William Gibson, who said, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed." Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, Max, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say cross-border payments and things like that, or just being able to seamlessly interact with people across the world via a blockchain. I think that's something that I would say upwards of 95% of the world is not aware that they could do because their view of cryptocurrency and blockchain is so narrow. And I think that's something that needs to be improved upon in general. But I would say that's a big piece right now of the future that is right in front of us and we just haven't quite identified it yet.
Yep, I love it. All right. As we start to finish off, time to get weird just for a second. if we haven't got word already, Max, if we really zoom out, what do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I see utopia. A lot of people may think things like AI and automation can lead to a dystopian future. I actually see it as freeing up humans to do what we actually want to do, which is enjoy ourselves and explore and do things we like, rather than have to dedicate a significant portion of our life to, production, to allow everyone else in the world to kind of do the things we do every day. So I actually do see it as a utopian future, because I think everyone here just wants to be able to spend their time doing things they like to do.
I like it. Couldn't agree more. It's better to live your life as an optimist looking forward to utopian futures than a pessimist in the dark. But speaking of, I suppose, dystopia and utopia, the final question for you, Max. What is your favorite science fiction book, a film, or TV show?
This is a really tough question to think of off the top of my head.
It is.
I would say one. I'll just name one that I thought was really interesting. Was called The 100.
Yes.
It's just a group of 100 people are sent basically to a different planet to inhabit it, and it's just an interesting story. So
nice. Speaking of dystopian sci-fi, I know the new season of Black Mirror is out on Netflix at the moment. I haven't started watching it yet, but I'm very much looking forward to that.
Black Mirror is one of those shows that it's incredibly intriguing, and it's also very disturbing at the same time. So I'll be watching it eventually, but it takes a little bit of getting myself ready for it, because it always seems to bring on some anxiety about what could happen in the future.
Very much so. It's provocative in the most unsettling of ways. All right.
Exactly right.
Hey, Max, this has been brilliant. I have very much enjoyed talking to you today. And, it's great to see the progress that you and the team are making at Archway as we get ever closer to Mainnet launch. Nothing else to say, really. But again, just tell people again where they can go to keep up to date with everything Archway, Phi Labs. And look, if you're on Twitter yourself, shout it all out.
Sounds good. And yeah, Andy, I've enjoyed this quite a bit as well, and I appreciate you having me on. For the listeners out there, if you want to keep up with what's going on with Archway, follow us on Twitter. So that's at Archway HQ. That's our core account. My account is actually at CryptoChem and 4 zeros at the end. And then make sure you follow our Phi Labs account as well, which is at Phi_Labs. But overall, just make sure that you're keeping up with the Twitter and Discord. That's where you're going to get a majority of your updates in real time. Those are probably the best spots to stay involved with the community and what's being built.
Awesome. Thank you, Max. All the best, and bye for now. All right, there you go. That was Max from Archway, the value capture chain. That website again, of course, archway.io. Link is in the show notes. Thanks for coming on, Max. Black Mirror. Must get on to watching that. Have you guys been watching that? Yeah. It's a little bit controversial this new season. I think it goes in a few different directions, but you never really know what you're going to get with Black Mirror. So just got to give it a go, I guess. Anyway, thank you, team, for listening here at the end of the show. That is the end of another episode. Please make sure you are subscribed to the Crypto Conversation and whatever podcast app you are using, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. But that is today's show. Thanks, team. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin.